So Deadpool's a lot stronger than I thought it was going to be. Let's talk about that. Hello and welcome to Nelson All Over Cars. Today we're going to take a deep dive look at one of the newest heroes in Marvel Champions, which is Deadpool. I keep calling him Daredevil, and I will not edit it out for the rest of this video. So if I say Daredevil, know that I mean Deadpool. But anyways, Deadpool is a crazy powerful hero. We're going to talk about why. We're going to talk about his hero, his cards, some of the basic cards that we like to run, and there's a lot of them. We'll talk a little bit more about basic when we get there, because I did a couple of tests. We're going to talk about the aspects. We're going to rank those in terms of his least to best in, and then we're going to talk about like overall thoughts. Now, this is going to be primarily a solo review. One hero, Daredevil, jeez. Deadpool is the only hero on the table. However, we will at the end of the video have some multiplayer thoughts where we talk a little bit more about how he would function in a multiplayer game. If you want to jump ahead to any of these sections or come back to any of them, there will be timestamps in the video so you can do so at your leisure. Anyways, let's talk about his alter ego. Wade Wilson, this is where the funness begins, which is not a word, but we're going to keep it in there because Wade would be proud. Funness and power starts right here on his alter ego side. He has the highest recovery stat of anybody in the game at 8 recovery, which is incredibly powerful, and also is going to be incredibly good once we learn a little bit more about his gimmick, which is on his hero side, all about dying, quote, dying. His alter ego ability is also really good. It's called Break the Fourth Wall. You can discard a card from your hand to search your deck for a Deadpool event and add it to your hand. Being able to fish out exactly what you need, the exact solution to the problem that you are being presented with, can be incredibly powerful, and he has some of the best solutions in the game with his events. So this Break the Fourth Wall ability is going to be used many times. While we are talking about alter ego, he does have an alter ego support, which is the Chimichanga Truck. This actually may be my favorite support in the entire game just because of what it does to the recovery basic activation. It's a 2-cost support. It says after any identity performs the recover action, you get to ready that identity. Now, this is really cool for solo because you can get him back up to full health as long as you haven't modified his health or anything. So if you're at 1 health, and you'll be at 1 health in alter ego very frequently with Deadpool, you can heal up all the way back up to full health of 9 HP. Then you can ready and then, thwart, attack, or do whatever you want with your activation. However, the reason I like this game is the fact that it says any identity. So this could be any player in that multiplayer game. So if you are in hero form, you don't need to recover, but your teammate does, you can get a, quote, free recovery out of this. I love to see the recovery support here, and I hope that we do get to see more ways to kind of incentivize recovering, because I do think that I'm not doing as much as recovering, and I think it's a fun design space to explore. So I like it. I like it so much. I love the Chimichanga Truck. But let's talk about his hero side. So on his hero side, he has a 200, 200, 100 stat line, but you do ignore the zeros. So it's a 2-2-1 stat line, which is not the greatest, but he's fine. He's fine. He has a hand size of 5, and his ability here is what's going to make him so incredibly powerful. This is called the Regenerating Degenerate, and it says when you would be defeated, you instead set your HP dial to 1, change to alter ego form, and add an acceleration token to the main scheme. Now this is super crazy, especially when you can then heal all the way back up to full, and if you have the Chimichanga Truck, you get to ready. You can go right at it again. What this means is you can basically ignore defense for a lot of scenarios. And we'll talk a little bit about the overall scenarios and where he's going to struggle and where he's going to thrive later in the video. It's probably going to be in our overall thoughts section, but it makes him incredibly powerful because there's so many villains, you just don't have to worry about damage. That's pretty great. The last thing I'm going to say about this ability before we flip into talking about his cards is I will normally take a big hit, flip down, and then we have all of his alter ego support. So the Chimichanga Truck, the healing, any of your mutant supports. He's a mutant, so you can trigger all of those incredible alter ego mutant supports, as well as break that fourth wall, go grab another card, and then let's talk about the cards. for what he can grab. He's got a lot of really interesting cards. The first one we're going to talk about is called Meta Knowledge. It says when an encounter card is revealed, cancel all of its effects and discard it. Take 1 damage for each icon in the card's boost area. This is pretty nice. However, usually when we're in the step of the villain phase where we're resolving encounter cards, I'm already in alter ego, and this is a hero response. And so very infrequently am I actually able to trigger this. So it's a good card. However, most of the time when we're revealing encounter cards, we're in alter ego, especially if we're playing like that rush, push damage, ignore defense strategy. However, this has come in really clutch, especially if we're going up against situations or scenarios that aren't as nice to us, and maybe they deal out indirect damage and we're not playing that fast and loose flip down with 1 HP playstyle, but it only goes uphill from here. Next up we have the Deadpool's katanas. These are 2 cost restricted weapons, and he has 2 of these. It says you can take 1 damage to deal 2 damage with piercing. Really easy damage. We normally don't care about our health. As long as this doesn't kill us, we should be fine. And even if it does kill us, I've actually used this where I had 1 hit point, use the katanas, deal 2 damage, flip over, heal, do all of my stuff, break the 4th wall, flip back up, because that does not take our once per turn flip. So it's a lot of flexibility. The katanas are nice, especially because Deadpool is going to want to be throwing a ton of big chunks of damage. And so this is his solution to tough. You can take a damage, pierce 2 damage, and you're off to the races at that point. It also combos really well with his arm to the teeth upgrade. This is, I think, how do I want to say this? I'm really happy with how they incorporated the break the 4th wall mechanic that Deadpool is kind of known for in this game, because Arm to the Teeth says that whenever you play the card, you search your collection for a weapon upgrade from any aspect and attach it face down here. This means that you can go basically into your box, and anything that you have not played, or anything that's in that box, you can grab and put it face down. Then as an action, you can swap the card here with a weapon you control. So he does have those katanas. You can swap that out. You can swap it into a sonic rifle. If you're playing aggression, you have easy access to confuse. If you want to grab hand cannons because maybe you're doing some more basic attacking. I really enjoy sonic rifle. That's probably my normal go-to weapon that I choose with this, because I really like confusing him, because I'm going to be in alter ego fairly frequently. Now, most of the villain activations come when we're in hero form, but that does protect against the advance. Honestly, there's a ton of good options here. The last one I want to mention here is lightsaber laser swords. Whatever one gets me around the IP issues, where from the new pool aspect, and so now you can start just swinging light laser swords around. A lot of fun options. I'm actually really curious. So let me know in the comments what your favorite thing to grab with this arm to the teeth ability is, because it's fun. It's fun. Alrighty, let's move on to, I think, one of his best cards in the game, which is Maximum Effort, and this is where it starts to get a little crazy. This is the 0 cost attack event that says you can take damage equal to the amount of health. So basically, however much health you have, you can take that much damage and deal that much damage to an enemy. This is for 0 cost. So right off the bat, you could take 9 damage, kill yourself, and flip down and have all that. Usually what I'm doing, if I have 9 health, I go 8 damage with Maximum Effort. So it's a 1 effective cost for 8 damage, which is crazy on its own. And then I have the villain hit me, and then I get to do all my alter ego stuff. Incredibly powerful on its own, but we're going to talk about the shenanigans that we can get in with aspect and basic cards here in a second, because it does not have a limit. You can take as much damage as you want, and this means that if you up your health, you can take a dumb amount of damage and deal a stupid amount back. Yoo-Hoo is his thwart card, which is very similar to Maximum Effort, basically the same thing, except it costs 1, and it says you can take damage and remove threat equal to the amount of damage that you take. So this has helped, especially to clear some side schemes. One of the things that I've really enjoyed doing is if I get a side scheme in my opening hand, I can play that. I can then use my Break 4th Wall ability, tutor a Yoo-Hoo, take damage, and immediately clear the side scheme. I'm thinking Specialized Training, some of these with higher threat caps, and you can immediately start with that boon on the table, and all you have to do is mulligan for the side scheme. So Yoo-Hoo I think of as more of an early game card. There are a lot of villains in this game where maximum effort and then the next card that we're going to talk about can win in 2 turns. So with that said, a lot of villains you don't even need Yoo-Hoo, but it is nice to set up, especially for some of those longer slugs. Now the rest of his kit kind of plays off the acceleration tokens on the main. Remember, we're adding those acceleration tokens every single time we get defeated or the amount of damage that he's taken. I talked about this next card, so the maximum effort and his 3-cost event called This Card is Fire have such a great symbiotic relationship. It's incredibly powerful and probably why he's one of the best heroes in the game. So this is a 3-cost event that is effectively a better Gamma Slam. So you deal damage equal to the amount of damage you sustained. So if you're sitting at not raising your health at all, you're sitting there at 8 damage because you've played a maximum effort, you've taken the 8 damage, you've dealt that, then you can play This Card is Fire for an additional 8 damage because you sustained 8. Now again, if we keep raising our health, the more that we sustain, the more that this card deals back. In solo, that's a lot of damage. Alrighty, his signature ally is called Cable. This is a 3-cost 1/2/3, and he gets a +1 thwart, +1 attack for every single acceleration token on the main scheme, up to a 4/5, so +3 to each one of the stats. So yeah, that's really good. Now Cable, again, a lot of the times Deadpool wins faster than Cable is going to put his effectiveness out. So I've been trying to figure out how I want to frame this conversation and frame this video, because I think for any standard villain in the game, or 95% of the standard villains in the game, outside of maximum effort and This Card is Fire, you do not need any of his other cards to win. You just don't. Now, I've played some of the harder matchups against Thanos', Venom Goblins, Magnetos, and so now I'm talking Cable pulls his weight here, because these are longer fights. You have to be a little careful. There's indirect damage, so you can't just go fast and loose. Now, Cable, on the other hand, if we're placing a ton of acceleration tokens, and we've done so smartly, if you get him out there, 3 costs for 15 damage is incredibly powerful. If you use cards to heal him, he's going to be someone who wants to stay out on the table just because of how high of an impact he has. So Cable is really good and pretty much only needed for a lot of these higher tier, longer fight villains. He has a resource card in his kit called Montage. This has 1 wild resource and it generates 1 additional resources per acceleration, up to a total of 4 resources. So if you have 3 acceleration tokens on the main scheme, now Cable's doing crazy stuff. Montage is a 4 resource card, and yeah. I mean, you can play a Nick with it. You can play, Professor X. Usually, a lot of the times, I have 1 acceleration token on the main scheme by the end of my first turn. Or, I'm sorry, by the start of my second turn. So I've taken the attack, I've placed an acceleration. And so right there, Montage is already a Vibranium from Black Panther. It's a double wild. And every single wild resource on top of that gets better. Now he only has 1 of these in his kit, and so it's a little bit harder to trigger than the Vibraniums, but still a very, very good resource card because it leans into what Deadpool is trying to do. He has a card called Exhausting Personality, which just theme 10 out of 10. It's a 0-cost card, and you get to choose to either place an acceleration token on the main scheme to stun and confuse the villain. And I would just say that I may take this option in many games, even if my kit didn't revolve around putting acceleration tokens on the main. I think that this is probably a decent trade-off for many heroes. Now, when Deadpool wants those acceleration tokens on the main, then this is even better. But that's not it. The other option here is you can exhaust a player's identity. So this could be your own or another player's, and they get to draw cards equal to the number of acceleration tokens on the main scheme. I just played a game with Magneto where I had 11 acceleration tokens on the main scheme. So I drew Exhausting Personality, I exhausted myself, and I had 11 more cards. It's good. I mean, it's really, really strong. I also really like it in a multiplayer setting, and I guess I'm kind of trickling in some of my multiplayer thoughts into the solo reviews. So, sorry. But in the multiplayer setting, if you have someone out there who really needs like card draw, I'm thinking Hulks, I'm thinking Drax has pretty good card draw, probably at this time in the game, but your Hulks, your anyone who wants card draws, I guess that's anybody in the game, but anyone that wants card draws that doesn't necessarily love their basic activation, exhaust, draw a ton of cards, your friends are going to like you. That all is chaos, and everything about it is chaotic. Adding the accelerations to the main scheme is very dangerous. However, he has a fix in his kit with It Ain't Over. Now, this is a 1-cost upgrade that says it increases the threshold of the main scheme for 2 for each acceleration token on the main scheme. So now you don't really have to worry too much about scheming out, only on acceleration tokens. Now, you'll probably hit that if you don't ever look at the main scheme again, right? But every acceleration token raises that cap by 2, and so now you're looking at, if you have 5 acceleration tokens, you're adding 6 threat per player on the main, which is going to be most. However, It Ain't Over increases that threshold by 10, so now you have a lot more wiggle room, and you can go grab the Yoo-Hoos or anything to take that main scheme down. Maybe every other turn or so, but it can still be an issue. And It Ain't Over, just it's a breath of relief, right? You have a little bit more of a headroom if you are going for those longer games, or if you're in a multiplayer game. This is an excellent card. That's his kit, and he can win pretty much with only his kit. We're going to talk about basic cards, but his ability to go find exactly what event he needs. He can find thwarting, he can find damage, he can find exhausting personality for card draw, he can find answers. And that, to me, means that, I mean, he's one of the best heroes in the game. Let's talk about the cost curve. Cost curve is skewed a little bit high. It's a 1.91 per card. It does not affect him as much because his alter ego ability is able to pull any of his events, and a lot of his events are going to be 0 or 1 cost. And so since you have this option, you can pull either your lower cost cards to balance out the higher cost cards in your hand, or if you have only low cost cards, you can pull This Card is Fire, and you can kind of craft your hand to fit the cost curve of the present information in your hand. So that's fine. Or you can just rush it and you'll be fine. If you rush, and I know a lot of people don't enjoy rush, but Deadpool is the best rush hero in the game, and you can just do that, and the cost curve there does not really matter that much, especially because of his alter ego ability. You're not really looking for much other than his cards. Let's talk about the basic cards that he really likes. Now, he likes all of the mutant support stuff, but I'm going to call out a couple here in particular. Mutant Education is a fantastic card. It allows you to shuffle 2 cards from your discard pile, or 2 identity-specific cards from your discard pile back into your deck, which he can then break the 4th wall and go grab. So if you need a This Card is Fire, shuffle it back in, discard a card, go grab This Card is Fire, and then deal the 8 damage that you need. So Mutant Education is great. Normally, I like running a X-Mansion alongside of Mutant Education, because what Mutant Education says is if X-Mansion is in play, you then get to draw a card. I've stopped running X-Mansion in my games, mainly because X-Mansion is slower than Deadpool wants to go. So don't necessarily ever really need the healing from X-Mansion. It is a fairly expensive card, and I don't find myself needing X-Mansion as much. Now, I do really like Moira. So Moira says whenever you flip from alter ego to hero form, you get to draw a card, or you exhaust her and you get to draw a card. Now, this is cool because Deadpool is actually one of the only heroes that's can easily and consistently always flip to hero form. Every single turn he can flip to hero form and trigger Moira. And so Moira looks kind of like an Avengers Mansion in this case, because if we're taking a damage, we're taking a hit, we flip down to alter ego. At the start of our next turn, we're going to flip up. And so the downside, quote downside, of flipping down to alter ego is you are still stuck with that 5 hand size. Moira gets you that card draw up to 6. So that's pretty nice. Downtime is a card that I'm actually running a lot with Deadpool, and it's a card that I haven't run in a long time. So he has a 8 recovery. Downtime gives him +2 recovery, so that takes him up to 10. Now, this is more than the health that he has, which we can then up with endurance or the symbiote suit. And this is where Deadpool gets his S tier rating. So, spoiler alert, I guess. But endurance, symbiote suit, right there, that puts you at plus 14 health, right? So, or no, plus 13 health. Endurance is plus 3, Symbiote Suit is 10. So now if you take all of your damage, or you do a maximum effort, you're at 13 plus 9, 23. You can deal 23 damage with a 0-cost card. Deal 22, this card is fire, deal 22 more. So raising Deadpool's health is incredibly powerful because all of his cards deal off of dealing or taking damage or dealing damage equal to that which you have sustained. And this is a great way to just increase that threshold. So with those cards right there, with his kit cards, with Mutant Education, with the Symbiote Suit or Endurance, those cards, those combos of cards right there can beat 80% of the villains in 2 to 3 turns. If you can get Symbiote Suit down on turn 1, you can then trigger his Break the Fourth Wall, grab the maximum effort, and deal 18 damage on turn 1. That's going to take out the majority of stage 1, stage 2 of villains even. And then you'll take that damage, tutor, this card is fire, do it again. There's a video, I'll link it here. I beat Ronin in 2 turns, standard Ronin. But like as I've played more, you do have to play a little bit safer, but you can do this to almost any villain. And so when we're talking about the aspects, and spoiler alert, he's good in all of them. This is just adding to what he can already do. Knowing that I would probably rate him high A tier if his maybe even S tier, honestly. I would rate him really, really high. If as a additional restriction, it says you cannot include aspect cards, he would be fine. So with that being said, let's talk about some of the aspect cards. We're going to rate the 5 aspects. Now I'm going to include Pool here. I don't think that's going to be a habit that I do, but since Deadpool came with Pool, I felt like I should probably talk about him. We're going to rate the 5 in terms of least good in to most effective in, and then I'm going to tell you what my favorite is once we do get there. Again, he's going to be good in all of them. In 5th place, we're going to put Leadership. Honestly, Leadership is kind of more than what Deadpool needs. Leadership is the ally, the money, resource. It's very high money, very control, and honestly, Deadpool just doesn't really need it. Now, I do like Leadership a lot if we are running against things with a ton of indirect damage. Now, if we're doing that, I'm going to be putting in a lot of high health allies, and so we can spread out some of that indirect damage to those allies, which is Leadership. However, this is not a super frequent occurrence that we're running into a ton of indirect damage in our games. So Leadership in number 5th. In the 4th place aspect, we're going to go with the Pools. So I think Pool is chaos. I'm not a good Pool player. I haven't really figured out how to play Pool. So I'm not sure if this 4th place ranking is either my ineptitude or it is actually just way too chaotic for what Deadpool is already trying to do. However, with like cards like Mulligan or the resource cards, because you can really kind of hit that high threshold or the no sustained damage, Deadpool and Pool can play a conservative side of the Pool aspect fairly effectively. Now, I think the way that I played it, where I just went all in on all of the icons and everything and led, I think I still won that game. Maybe I don't remember, but it was wild. And so Pool, I think, is a little bit chaotic for an already fairly chaotic hero, which is why it's in 4th place. Going into 3rd place, we have Protection. Now, the reason that I like Protection here is mainly Taunt. Taunt allows you to take a villain attack, draw 3 cards, and then this is going to allow you to get your better card sooner. You can flip down to Alter Ego, so maybe you did not die, quote, die in the villain phase. The villain, takes you down to 3 health. You have a taunt. You can then play a taunt. The villain's going to knock you into Alter Ego. You get to draw 3 cards. And so it's just a way to cycle some more cards. It has different ways to take damage. He doesn't really need the aspect cards, but this is just a way to turn what he's already good at into, or his strength into a better strength. And so Protection is in that 3rd place. In 2nd place, we have Justice. Now, Justice is interesting because Deadpool can thwart really well with his Yoo-Hoo. He has a 2 thwarts already in his kit. However, the reason I really like Justice is you have yellow cards that help with thwart, meaning that you do not have to play Yoo-Hoo. If you do not play Yoo-Hoo, you don't have to take damage, and you can instead use that damage as a resource for maximum effort. So if you have supplemental ways to deal with threat, you can then take all of your health and shovel it into maximum efforts and just go with the villain go face with the villain. Now, you also have ways to confuse, and so you can play a little bit longer of a game with Justice. So that helps a little bit with some of his, flipping down into Alter Ego, all that stuff. But that's second place. And in the first place aspect, which is actually my favorite, is aggression. So Rush here is king, and he can do it in any aspect. I honestly have a Rush deck set up. I keep motioning to the front, the table here, because I have a basic Rush deck set up. So he can rush in anything, and aggression just helps facilitate Rush. And I usually don't put too much stock into Rush. However, Deadpool can rush 99% of the villains in this game, and he can do it with his basic and aspect cards, and his aggression cards just help him do it more consistently. And so you get red cards, you get all of the basic Rush staples, your drop kicks, all of this kind of stuff. Actually, I don't think you want drop kick because I don't think you want to stun. But anyways, you have ways to deal, and aggression you can rush, and you can win in 2, easily 3 turns, and that's why aggression is the top. Now, I don't know if I dislike Rush. I don't think I love Rush. However, I've been having a lot of fun with Deadpool Rush, and I'm not 100% sure why. That may just be because it's new, or that may be because I'm turning over a new leaf in my life and I enjoy Rush now. I don't know. But let's talk about what the community thought. They ranked him as his best aspect being Pool, which maybe I think I'm just missing something with Pool. I don't get Pool. It's not my style of play, but they had it far and away his best aspect, then followed by aggression, then justice, and then so we were kind of the same except for Pool. Pool is completely way out of what my ranking had them in, but everything else kind of lined up. They had them ranked as an S tier, and this is where we get to talk about some stuff. I'm going to agree with that. Now, I reserve S tier right now for my top 5 heroes. I think he is a top 5 hero in the game. Actually, I'm putting him at second best in the game. I'm putting him behind Doctor Strange as the second best hero in the game. And I think he can kind of maybe even flirt with that top spot, even especially in kind of the easier, lower tier scenarios. He's good. He's very good. I've played a lot of games with him, and his damage output for anything that you're not teching against Deadpool wins games. You can beat anybody from Red Skull. You can beat anybody from Galaxies pretty much just easy with Rush, with the combo of maximum efforts, and this card is fire, symbiote suits, frontline specialist, which I meant to mention this in the basic part, but we have the new specialized training side scheme, so we go get frontline specialist. Now whenever we take damage, we're getting card draws. We get plus health, which increases our maximum effort, and this card is fire abilities. I wanted to stress test him because last time I said that a hero was the best in the game, that was Wolverine, and that was because I had not played enough games with him. I didn't log my games. I've gotten bad about logging my games again, but I think I'm probably around 20 to 25 games with Deadpool. And to stress him the most, I literally just finished playing a all basic deck. I did not put a single aspect in here, and I easily handled Magneto and Venom Goblin. I thought those were going to be the two worst case scenarios. Sandman is also pretty tough because he deals that indirect damage and kind of counters him, but we can beat Sandman fairly easily if we just run ally heavy. But if you play him smart, you don't play him super rush strategy. Now, I think Venom Goblin was about 4 turns is what I beat him. Magneto took a lot longer, but that's just Magneto. But you're able to burst through the side schemes, you're able to deal damage, and pretty much you play almost a control style game until you're ready to throw 40 damage. And you can do that. With that, we have wins against the hardest villains in Expert with a basic kit. So the fact that he's able to beat those high tier villains with a basic deck, he doesn't need any cards outside of that basic, and his kit cards means that he can be uber consistent rush strategy, which normally is kind of only for aggression or maybe some leadership builds, but really you don't need any of those cards, which means that he is going to be so good, and I'm going to rate him at number 2 in the game. He can tutor the cards. He can get exactly what he wants, so it's not a random luck of the draw you're drawing into, and you can break that fourth wall, Mutant Education, hit this card is fire 2 turns in a row, maximum efforts. It's so good. I want to talk about Rush. I think sometimes Rush can kind of get devalued in power rankings because not all villains can be rushed, and you have to have a very specific deck build, and it has a little bit of luck to it. That is not necessarily the case with Deadpool. And while you can play other ways, you can go the stun, or you can go like the long control game with Justice. You can do that. However, I think it's going to be less effective. So just because Rush is his greatest strength, you can play it other ways, but I feel like in most situations you're playing a lesser version of a Deadpool deck, unfortunately. So that's Rush. He's good. He can beat anybody in the game. That's all about the Rush. I want to talk about more of his kit because it's really freaking cool. His acceleration token gimmick is a lot of fun. It's a lot slower than a lot of his burst damage, but if you are not going for that burst effect, it's a cooperative game, you don't have to rush, and you are kind of stressing that It Ain't Over is a freaking sweet card. Increase that threshold, and then now you have a lot of breathing room, and you can use Yoo-Hoos, or you can use your Justice cards to clear that main scheme. If you go It Ain't Over plus an Under Surveillance, your threat threshold is incredibly high. It's just a lot of fun. The Arm to the Teeth is a freaking sweet card. Being able to go grab a weapon from off aspect. So if I'm in Justice, you can go grab a Sonic Rifle, have Sonic Rifle every single turn. If you want overkill damage, you can go get that hand cannon. You can find solutions to the problem. I really like that design space. It's really freaking cool. Exhausting Personality, it is a ton of fun to draw a lot of cards. I mean, Deadpool, I'm having a lot of fun with. They knocked it out of the park with theme. I think he is incredibly fun to play, and I'm really happy that we got Deadpool. Let's talk about multiplayer, because I think he gets a little bit more balanced because the HP of the villain scales faster than his damage output. So, like, if you have an 18 health villain, in multiplayer that's 36. A 18 health villain, if you get Symbiote Suit on turn 1, you can kill him in solo. In multiplayer, that doesn't really work because of that scaling of the health. But he can be the damage person. He can be the threat person with Yoo-Hoos and Overwatches. I mean, that's a lot of threat. You can play selfishly, you can throw acceleration tokens around, or you can play very, very supporting, the support role, because you can have the chimichanga truck. You can have people not need to worry about their health too much because they know that they have a free recover with that chimichanga truck. You can pass out cards with Exhausting Personality. You can have people who want to have cards and struggle to get those cards just flood their hand with cards after, like, kind of mid-late game with Exhausting Personality. 0 cost, let them draw 3, let them draw 5 cards. You can do a lot. You can cancel anyone's encounter card with meta knowledge. So in a multiplayer game, usually, I haven't played a ton of multiplayer with Deadpool, so this is a lot of theory crafting, and I would love to hear your thoughts on multiplayer Deadpool in the comments. But in multiplayer, I probably am not taking that hit and dying as much, and so especially if I know that there's going to be a lot of encounter cards coming, and so I can stay and use meta knowledge on the worst card that's coming out. I can cancel the glider, I can cancel a shadows, I can cancel those cards, and you get so much tempo with that boost. You can play support, you can play super selfish. I think Deadpool is going to be a lot of fun in multiplayer. My only word of caution is that I would definitely prioritize It Ain't Over if you are going to be running a lot of the acceleration token shenanigans, because yeah, your teammates are going to be a lot happier with you. Anyways, that's my thoughts on Deadpool. This is a crazy one. I'm curious to hear what your all's thoughts are. Do you enjoy Deadpool? Do you think that he is one of the best heroes in the game? Do you think he's not? Have I completely misjudged him? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to have a conversation with y'all about that. But thanks for hanging out, and I appreciate y'all. We'll do X23 next, so if you are curious about that, make sure to stick around. Peace.